Good afternoon on a beautiful Chicago day. Gorgeous blue sky and crisp air. I've been so much enjoying it. I've just spent the last 5 years writing this book on the visual arts. I've been under the radar for a very long time. My aim was to produce a very slim handbook that would help young people and people who are interested in the arts too to appreciate the great drama of Western art, the great trajectory of our art history. I would have loved to have extended it into world art, but that would have been absolutely impossible. This book was supposed to take 2 years. I'm very lucky to have such a patient publisher. Simplicity is hard. My aim was to produce very short chapters that would be a pleasure to read, that would contain everything about the background of a particular work, the historical context, economic factors when relevant, the biography of the artist, and then finally end with an evocation of what I perceive to be the meaning of each work. In other words, what I'm saying is that the arguments of academe, this approach or that approach, are really dead ends, that everything can be combined. It's quite possible to do it also in a clear, accessible, colloquial manner that people can read, that's not jargon heavy with a bunch of dreck imported from Europe. Okay, things I've been trying to extirpate, okay, from academe for the last 20 years. And the book is I believe, from very keen readers of my work in the past, will now and then recognize my voice coming to the fore, the little barbs I may make about Frida Kahlo as the great patron saint artist of feminism. I mean, just very, very, very slight. My voice is confined to the polemical introduction. After that, I feel it was necessary to get out of the way and let the artworks speak for themselves. Now, the book is a protest against the coffee table art book syndrome, which has been going on for decades. I love the magazine Architectural Digest. It's gorgeous, right? But art books are used there as decor. You see them all, stacked up on shelves. And I mean, these books, they're so heavy. You'll like look at them once, and they just like sit there, like objects to be dusted, for the next 30 years. And you can like sit comfortably with one of these things in your lap, really like crease into your thigh. So what I was looking for is something very handy, okay, something inviting that would contain this would be an open door to the whole history of Western art, and yet it would be comfortable in the hand. And actually, my vision was of a paperback that would literally fall open in a young person's hands. That was my vision. And my publisher said, no, okay, now if people want, if you're going to have such full-page glossy reproductions of works of art, people want an object. Now, and then in the process of the last 5 years, while doing this book, I was thinking, am I out of my mind? I am trying to write an art book in the age of Kindle. I mean, what am I doing? Okay, this is like completely out of sync. Well, no, it turned out, once the manuscript was submitted last fall, that Random House, or more specifically, Knopf Doubleday, the fantastic production design team that I've been working with, no, they had this thing, yes, precisely because it is the age of the Kindle, precisely to show how beautiful a book can be, to show how a book itself can be an objet d'art. So not only does this book contain 29 chapters focusing on individual objet d'art, works of art, but the book itself as a product of this production design team at Knopf Doubleday is like, to die for. I mean, the gloss. This book is so heavy, slim but so heavy because of the glossy paper. I haven't seen such a beautifully designed art book in years. The printings. It was printed in the United Kingdom. Another one of my aims, okay, was to provide something to, for the current market after the great art survey books that have been used in universities for half a century. There was like Gardner's History of Art, very big book. that dates from the late 1920s. There's H.W. Jansen's The History of Art. That's from 1962. It's an absolute campus classic. This thing is massive, absolutely massive. I weighed it, okay, for this book. 7.5 pounds, okay? 7.5 pounds. You know, you're not going to have like a quiet afternoon. I think I'll curl up, okay, with Jansen's History of Art, you know, this afternoon. I mean, it's impossible. And the book is magisterial. Jansen was a great scholar of Donatello, a scholar of the first order. However, the book moves so fast in going from cave art all the way down to the modern period that it doesn't pause very long on individual artworks. I felt more can be said. So I've actually modeled this book on Catholic breviaries. Okay, there's in collections of devotional images. What I'm trying to induce people to realize is that you can have a personal engagement. Really, what I'm saying, a spiritual engagement with a work of art. You don't have to go to the museum for it. In fact, museums today are becoming more and more like circuses, okay, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's great that museums are doing so well. They have great blockbuster shows, although the blockbuster shows are always old master or impressionist art, never contemporary art. That doesn't bring out busloads of people coming from every state in the union. But the atmosphere of the museums is like it's not conducive to contemplation. People are people run into you. They're on their audio phones, and you feel like you're in a bar. Sometimes people are into you. So, I mean, for example, for this book. For Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, which is the most important painting of the 20th century. Okay, very, very difficult. Here it is over a century later, okay, and that painting still has not been absorbed into common culture. People interested in the arts know it, but people, most mainstream citizens show that painting to them, and they would go, "This is crap. My 7-year-old could do better, et cetera, et cetera." All right, this is a major work. In the process of doing the research for my chapter on it, I was noticing like how the details that I had been mentioning in class when I've been talking about this work for decades were in the huge scholarly literature, about it. And so I thought I've got to get up there and really look at this painting. I went up. Well, how can you look at the painting? The crowds in front of it. I mean, people were like shoving me aside. There were German tourists like snapping pictures like this and so on. I'm going, this is like just. It's wonderful again. Wonderful box office for the museums. But again, what I'm saying is you don't have to be going to a museum to have this personal engagement with art. And this idea that somehow young people are going to benefit, take them and pile them into a school bus, take them to a museum. It's like a great outing for them. No, I'm saying this group thing. No, it's between yourself and a great work of art. You can get this in a book. So one of the themes of this book, okay, is, and this is going completely against current academic orthodoxy, completely. Okay, what the theme of this book is the spirituality of art, and the spirituality of the artistic mission. Now, no one can get away with talking like this, but me, because I am a professed atheist. Okay, so I have a long career as a defender of pornography and prostitution, which I still will, absolutely still have the. Oh, I'm not sure if that's from the pornographers or the prostitutes in the audience, but however, I accept your support. All right. I would love to have put Tom of Finland, the great gay illustrator, in this book, but then they would have driven away the homeschooling moms I'm actually trying to reach. So, I was careful how much sex, was in the book. There's very little. I mean, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, Picasso's painting, is seen in a brothel. There's no way to get around that. I have a Titian nude. I have Bronzino's portrait of Andrea Doria with a hint of a penis, and so on. I have Renee Cox, a fabulous African-American photographer, with a photo montage of herself wearing dominatrix boots, from a trash punk shop, etc. But on the whole, I tried to expand the potential audience of this book, to people who are not accustomed to looking at the arts and who have a very low opinion of the arts. So on the one hand, in a period of extremely cynical modes of analysis in the humanities, in part of the wake of post-structuralism and postmodernism. All right, I'm flying in the face of that. Okay, I'm objecting to this reductive approach to art in often nakedly ideological fashion over the last, it's really 30 years, going on 40 years now. Okay, the ideological approach to art. I would say that that's probably the dominant concept at the elite schools, at the elite universities in the United States, okay, that art is ideological, that art is a tool of ideology. And so the students at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level are encouraged to approach the artwork in terms of what the artwork is doing wrong, okay, or what the artwork is hiding. Right? The artwork as a symptom of a power play by a certain group in a society, or a certain caste or class in a society. The artwork as merely the product of economic forces and so on. Right? So as a consequence, aesthetics, or the ability to appreciate art, connoisseurship, cultivation. These things are not being taught in the universities right now. It's extremely depressing. And so it's really no surprise why the state of cultural criticism is so low and the state of the fine arts is so low right now. There's the proof of the sterility of post-structuralism and postmodernism is that we have after several generations of this now, there are no major culture critics, young culture critics. They haven't emerged from this. The figures whom academe thinks are culture critics are simply mirroring back to the senior professors the same fads and trends and jargon-filled discourse, over the last 30 years. It's really a tragedy. Okay, it's an absolute tragedy. The potential professors, the potential critics who were most enthusiastic about art, okay, were driven out of the graduate schools because enthusiasm was considered naive. Okay, I started getting letters about this from the moment I came on the scene in 1990. Finally, after my first book finally was published, and everywhere I go, I hear the same stories. I too wanted to go into literary studies. I too, left Berkeley or the University of Chicago or Harvard or Johns Hopkins. Okay, because there was no. I was forced to read all this labyrinthine theory and to spout it out, and any professing of enthusiasm for the artwork was considered reactionary. Okay? So I'm trying, as an Italian American, I'm trying to bring enthusiasm back, okay, as a mode of approach because that's the way I was raised. My family, it came from Italy. They came from the farm, for heaven's sakes, to work in the shoe factories, okay, in Endicott, New York, an industrial town, and the Italian peasant attitude toward the arts is completely reverential. I mean, art is not elitist in Italy. Art belongs to the people at every possible level. So, I mean, they're everywhere. There weren't many objects that my grandparents had, but they would have like souvenir ashtrays, from the Vatican with Michelangelo, sculptures on it, and like painted ceramic plaques in the bathroom, and it would be like the Pietà or something. Right? So there was never the sense that art was this conspiracy being foisted by an elite. Okay? And the reason the Italians have this attitude is because of their of how seriously they take the crafts. Okay, Italian immigrants were of several generations. All four of my grandparents and my mother were born in Italy. But everyone worked in the crafts. I mean, you'd work all day at the job, and the way you'd relax, come home, weave a basket. Okay, make a nut bowl. Turn steel, make a fence, whatever. There was always hammering going on, and constantly making craft, sewing. Okay. Everything, okay? It's another reason why I've never had that animosity toward fashion that so many other feminists have had. I am not fashionable, but I've always seen fashion as a craft, as an art form, because that's the way I was raised. In Italian culture, people would come up to you, okay? I mean, I was just used to this as a small child. People would just come up to you and start fingering your clothing, going, oh, this lapel is so, look at this lapel, how nice, look at this hem. People would just pick up your hems and be looking at them and so on, okay? So tailoring tailoring, and so on. And that's the reason also why the only place that, that I've been comfortable in or would hire me were art schools all these years. I'm a career teacher in art schools for 40 years now, or just a few years in the middle when I was not. And the reason is because I feel very comfortable with artists. Artists understand art as making, okay? They understand art as materials, as something grounded, in the body, in the physical world. And this is why all of those ideologies of academia don't work for the arts. The humanities, they actually will say everything is mediated through language. We can know nothing except that. And of course, language is flawed, so we can't know anything. Okay, all right. That's what you end up. You get a PhD in not knowing anything. Okay, if you go to. From this, all right. I mean, this is ridiculous because dancers, okay, for heaven's sakes, dancers their knowledge of the world is not mediated through language. It's absurd. They're so completely physically grounded. I have such rapport with dancers, always have. My students are, work in metals and fibers, and they're jazz musicians and actors and so on. Okay, and so the physical world is a very important component of the academic environment that I've been existing in. Anyway, so that's another theme of my book. I'm always careful. Every single artwork I'm talking about, every single chapter, I'm always talking very specifically about the materials and the limitations and possibilities of those materials. And I'm also always in this book stressing the fragility of art objects and how sometimes how miraculous it is that they've survived. A case in point being the charioteer of Delphi, okay, because the bronze was extremely valuable. Just like today, when there's been a great upsurge nationwide with the economic crisis of people going around and tearing air conditioners out of office windows and to take the copper wiring out. I mean, there have been cases of people going into McDonald's and taking, in my area, near Philadelphia, and removing the pipes, okay, to resell the pipes and so on. So metal was always valuable. That's why so few bronze statues have survived from antiquity. So the miracle of the survival of this gorgeous statue of the charioteer of Delphi, simply that there was an earthquake at Delphi, an avalanche that buried it, so people never didn't discover it until this past century. And so we have this gorgeous object. One of the few that survived from antiquity, a bronze that still has its eyes in it, remnants of the silver on it, and so on. Right? And the same thing with the tomb painting from the tomb of Queen Nefertari that opens my book. Again, so over the centuries, the seepage of water had done such damage to the tomb, and the Getty Institute, based in Los Angeles, in collaboration with an Egyptian organization, did this phenomenal job of a consolidation, okay, and rescue of those beautiful wall paintings, so with no additional pigment added. What they did was it was just absolutely microscopic. They didn't want to add anything to it. So it's not a question of filling in with modern paint. It's just what they did to clean. And I just have such respect, okay, for archaeologists and for conservators who help to save all of these very important artifacts from human history. So on the one hand, this book is attacking academe for its soullessness, okay, for the dead end of secular humanism right now, okay. I'm a secular humanist, but I want to save it from itself, because what's happening is that there's become into the cultural atmosphere in the United States a very chic and snide kinds of atheism that I associate with Christopher Hitchens, okay? Christopher Hitchens, who knew nothing about religion, who never lifted a finger to do any research into religion, whose life, okay, was not a model of what an atheist should be, okay? Whose psychological life was such turmoil, okay? And yet he made fashionable a sneering, cynical style, okay, of referring to religion, okay, that I think is an absolutely ethical atrocity. I am a product of the 1960s multicultural movement. Even though I'm an atheist, I rejected organized religion, I have enormous respect for all of the world religions. That's a huge element of spiritual quest in the 1960s that's been forgotten. Okay? It wasn't just about politics. The politics were very important. The civil rights movement, the protests against the Vietnamese War, the reawakening of feminism, the gay liberation movement, all these things were very important. Okay? But there was this other thing, okay? This movement outward toward other cultures, this embrace of these tremendous poetic forms. The great world religions, okay, they're poetry, they contain art and iconography, they're a collection of tremendous wisdom about human life. It's taken thousands of years, okay, for these to collect. And to get this kind of snide stuff coming from Christopher Hitchens, a writer for Vanity Fair, a socialite, okay, whose wife in his memoir, posthumous memoir, boasts of the 8-hour drunken dinner parties they would have with everybody there. What kind of an atheism is that? No, okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, okay? No. If you're going to approach young people, you know, from the position of atheism or secular humanism, you have to give them something else. You cannot just trash religion, okay, and also trash art, okay. What my atheism says, okay, I reject, you know, I do not believe in a personal God, right? However, I see in the enormous force of nature, okay. My attitude toward nature is very similar to that of Native Americans. In fact, that's my next project. My next project is about Native American art and archaeology, precisely about this. I think that the religious view of the elemental forces of nature in the Native American code, okay, is magnificent. It has many parallels to that of Wordsworth or Ralph Waldo Emerson and so on, all right? I see nature, okay, and I see art, okay, the incredible beauty and power of art. And my attitude toward art is reverential, okay, the same thing, right? These urban pseudo-sophisticates, okay, are incapable of reverence, okay, all right? And so what kind of thin gruel, okay, is being given to our young people? Nothing, absolutely nothing, okay? And then we wonder why the entire professional class in Manhattan and Los Angeles, they're on meds, they're all doping themselves on tranquilizers, okay, antidepressants, okay? Why? Because there's nothing. Their worldview is nihilistic, okay, absolutely nihilistic. Conventional thinking, right? They've rejected religion, but instead they've made a religion out of the Democratic Party. Okay, I'm a registered Democrat. Okay, but democratic politics of a particular conventional kind. Okay, that is the substitute. Okay, for the atheistic professional class now. Okay, right? And it's what I wrote years ago about post-structuralism. That post-structuralism was a new religion, you know, for these faithless, you know, academics and I said, this was 20 years ago, I said better Jehovah than Foucault. Okay? The Bible is a magnificent body of Hebrew poetry, right? If you're like washed up on a desert island, okay, whether you believe in God or not, the Bible is a fabulous thing to have with you, okay? Because there's the power of it in artistic terms and the great stories in it, based, you know, the archetypal dramas, quest stories and legends. It's absolutely magnificent, right? So I've been saying for 20 years that the true core curriculum for the world should be comparative religion. Okay, that is that every young person in the world should know the sacred texts, okay, and belief system of everyone else in the world, and that's the only way we're ever going to get any kind of political understanding. Okay, so everybody knows the Bible, everyone knows the Quran, and knows what knows what these things are based on. My generation was inherited the interest in Zen Buddhism of the beatniks. Okay, the beats. You had Gary Snyder, prominent, very important beat poet, who went off to actually become a Buddhist monk in Japan. Right? And then my generation made the movement toward Hinduism, toward India. That's why there were so many sort of sitar motifs, you know, in 1960s rock music. Ravi Shankar was playing at Monterey. The Beatles went off chasing their false guru, you know, in India, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and so on. And that particular element in the 60s quest, okay, has been forgotten. forgotten because, because of that disillusion with gurus, but also, unfortunately, my peers of my generation who were most interested in these themes were also the ones who were taking too much, too many psychedelics, okay? So LSD, okay, on the one hand, opened doors, okay, for people to walk through, but then the door kind of closed behind them. I don't know. So I'm just, I feel fortunate, that I had like this wariness, okay? I thought, what is this? These chemical things, I'm not going to experiment, with it, and thank heavens, all right, that I didn't. I mean, my grandfather made wine in his cellar. I mean, he grew grapes, so wine was considered, this ancient Dionysian thing, right? What's wrong with it? Wine, beer, okay, I think these are perfectly sufficient things. At any rate, I think we can blame the psychedelics, for the fact that the spiritual seekers, okay, who are most adventurous of my generation, then through their experiment with all of these things, as well as natural, peyote and mescaline and so on, in effect, they pickled their brains so that they never were able to write the books that they should have. And I regret this not only because of the cultural loss, but because that's why my work looks so odd. Okay, I look odd. They say no one can categorize me. They look, well, what is she? What side does she belong on? It's because all these missing books. Okay, and the missing people. Okay. So I really mourn them. All right. Now, on the one hand, okay, I'm assailing, the liberal side of the cultural landscape in the United States. Okay, for its snide cynicism about religion and this kind of snarky tone that's now everywhere, a sense of superiority. On the one hand, claiming to speak for the working class, but feeling so superior to the actual belief systems of the working class. I mean, I just despise that's default snarky tone. On the other hand, I'm also criticizing conservatives and saying that conservatives cannot go on claiming to uphold the Western tradition and calling for a return to traditional educational content and so on, at the same time as ignoring art, the history of art. But scholars and intellectuals have not made it easy, okay, for mainstream Americans to learn about the arts. I say in the introduction to Glittering Images that people who live in cities with major museums suffer from a tragic complacency about the condition of the arts. All right, I've been a great listener to talk radio for the last 20 years. I love talk radio as a populist medium, and I regret the fact that so few liberals have succeeded as hosts in that medium. The home of liberal thought is actually at NPR. There's a certain kind of a style of a vocal style, okay, and a tone on NPR that I think, okay, has become very genteel. Okay, it's the same thing as on the BBC. The BBC is extremely liberal as well. The arts find a home in both NPR and BBC. But that tone. I mean, like if I have to do an NPR interview, I have to like really, focus. Okay. And I have to get very mellow. It's almost like a kind of seance of gentility. And so, you see, whereas my natural mode is AM radio, okay? And AM radio, all right, is this barking, abrasive, colloquial style. It descends from the DJs of the 1950s, the ones who were like these crazy weirdo guys who like, listen to this platter, and they would spin the song. And that is the secret, okay, of AM radio. It's not just that it's conservative versus liberal that we're talking about, okay? But honestly, the AM radio format with its many callers, and people who call in from all over, and I would include, by the way, also sports radio, which I also listen listen to a lot, okay? AM radio has provided a forum, okay, for voices who are not heard anywhere else in the culture. I mean, like on Philadelphia Sports Radio, I mean, people will call in, you know, from construction projects to like talk about the problems with the Eagles game yesterday and this very learned analysis of everything that's wrong with the front line, and it goes on and on and on and on. People are calling from their trucks. I mean, it's absolutely a fantastic medium, okay? All right, so at any rate, over the last 20 years on talk radio, I have been hearing this disrespect for art and for artists, okay, that was really alarming me as a career teacher, you know, in art schools. Of course, I know the reason for that is because of those stupid series of controversies over sacrilege in art that was inaugurated in the 80s with Andre Serrano's Piss Christ, which for those of you who don't know, okay, this is a third or fourth rate work, okay, which is it's a large format photograph of a plastic crucifix submerged in a glass beaker of the artist's urine. Now, Andre Serrano is such a weenie, okay, that he never would even admit that he had any kind of transgressive or subversive intention. Instead, he like backtracked. No, what I was really talking about was the cheapening of Christ's image. Oh, that's why you called it Piss Christ. Right, okay. Now, you know, it's one thing if we're talking about a masterpiece, okay? I mean, my favorite work of sacrilegious art is by Salvador Dali. I name it in the introduction to the book, but I cannot even profane this august group, okay, by telling you what it is. It's a parody of the Annunciation, okay? It is hilariously X-rated. In fact, it was in the Playboy Mansion collection until very recently. I don't know where it is now. But that is my favorite work of sacrilegious art. This is a very wonderful work. It is learned, it is cheeky, it's audacious. For that, the art world, okay, should be having a controversy, not over Piss Christ. So, and there was a whole series of them. Now, as far as I'm concerned, okay, the last authentically avant-garde work, okay, or body of work, okay, was done by Robert Mapplethorpe in the late 1970s. His photographs of the gay sadomasochistic underground in New York, and that to me was that was the end of the avant-garde. Right? All right. What I'm saying to the art world is that the avant-garde was essentially killed by my hero, Andy Warhol, from the moment he took in Campbell's soup cans, okay, in the iconography of capitalism, okay, into his work. That was really the end of the very noble 200-year oppositional tradition of the avant-garde that began in the late 18th century, okay, with Romanticism, okay. And what I'm saying is that for the last 30 years, post Mapplethorpe, okay, the subversive or transgressive gesture is completely hollow and has become utterly corrupt. Because once, if you made an avant-garde gesture, there was a price to be paid for it. Okay, the Impressionist painters starved, okay? They had no way of showing their art. There were no art galleries back then, okay? If they did not toe the line and produce the kind of art that the salon jury would show in their either yearly or sometimes every 2 years, massive shows, these artists have no way of reaching potential clients, potential patrons, right? So the Impressionists, and other such avant-garde artists, going all the way down to the abstract expressionists of the 1950s, who had terrible depression and suicides and so on, okay? A price was paid. What price has been paid, okay, in this era of Piss Christ, okay, since the 80s? What is the price that's paid? Right? You do something that you take something from Catholic iconography, always Catholic, right? Never Jewish, never Muslim, okay, always Catholic, okay? Take something Catholic and do something scandalous to it, and you will be written up, okay, and celebrated in the New York Times, okay, all right? You will get a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, okay? You will be hired by the University of Chicago, okay, or Berkeley, or UCLA, okay? This is absolutely corrupt. How dare these people, how dare these worms, talentless worms, okay, borrow from the great avant-garde tradition of people who really died, okay, for their art. It's an outrage. We cannot tolerate this anymore, okay? The idea that art, by definition, speaks truth to power. Oh, it interrogates, okay, contemporary assumptions. Oh, really? Okay, this is utterly stale. Only a fraction of art in the whole history of art, whole history of world art, has been oppositional. Only a fraction, okay? And it was a great run. It was a great run from the late 18th century down to Andy Warhol, okay? All right, with a little bit of a blip into Mapplethorpe, okay? And that's it, okay? All right, it's a time now to go cold turkey on this stupid cant, okay, that is everywhere, okay? Oh, wait, now, this is the sign that I have 5 minutes? Okay, all right, this is the signal, all right. Otherwise, I take, audiences hostage, and it goes on for hours, and you have your own lives to live, after all. Okay, all right. Oh, wait, let me go fast here. All right, so, all right. All right, what group have I not offended? Let's see. All right, all right, so here's the thing, okay. By listening to talk radio, I realized that the low opinion that mainstream Americans still have of the arts, and in particular of abstract art. So I was determined to write a book that I would hope would reach, again, church-going, homeschooling moms, right, who have no way of supplying art, the history of art, okay, to their home curriculum, all right. In order to do that, okay, what I've done again is I've tried to create a continuity of this spiritual theme, so that my chapter titles are like resurrection, mystic vision, God's snare, like that. Okay, we move through the centuries until finally, I want a person who's been very skeptical about modern art, modernist art, to suddenly feel by the time he or she gets to Picasso, oh, it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. Picasso, Mondrian, Pollock. All right, you get this like same kind of dreamy sense, all right? And by the way, also, while I was doing the research for this book, it's absolutely scandalous. Mondrian, okay, who is considered the ultimate formalist, okay, with his grid of black lines and his hanging blocks of color and so on, all right? I couldn't believe when I did the research for that chapter how much Mondrian had written, okay, in his own words, in letters, in essays, in journals about the spiritual nature of every single thing he did. Every one of his black lines, every one of his blocks of color had a spiritual meaning to him, okay? In fact, he had early in his career been a practitioner of theosophy, okay, which was a spiritualist movement of the late 19th century. As late as World War I, Mondrian had hanging in his house a picture of Madame Blavatsky, okay, who was the leader, okay, of theosophy. Jackson Pollock also was a student of theosophy, okay? And early pictures of him show him in his teens imitating the dress even, kind of Byronic dress and long hair of Krishnamurti, who was a spiritualist. And so there's, Mark Rothko, whom I wanted to be in the book, but I finally just had to end the book. It would have gone on and on for another 5 years. Mark Rothko was always overt about the spiritual nature of his own artistic vocation. And you often will find this snide sense, although Rothko was always claiming a spiritual meaning to his his big hanging blocks of color and so on. So the nature of current discourse about the arts, okay, arts and letters, is that it is very inhospitable, okay, to these spiritual themes, and that's what this book is. The first step in the direction of trying to totally reform commentary on the arts and eventually the practice of the arts. But then my next step is I want to get the study of art history into primary schools. Right now, what's called art class, okay, in American schools is do-it-yourself, John Deweyite, okay, express your inner creativity, okay? The teachers hand construction paper and glue pots to the students. This is art. No, okay, that's fine, but real art history needs to be presented to students at a very early age so that they learn how to look at pictures, so that they know the names of major artists. In the European culture, the great artistic tradition is part of their national identity. So this is not such an issue. But America is still very young, very, very young nation. The arts have always struggled to survive here. We're practical and utilitarian. Right? So there are people who are followers, of the arts, but the majority of the American population has no way of ever contacting the arts. It's an absolute scandal. Okay, that most young people are graduating from high school without ever having seen a major painting or understood any of the history of Western art. So that's my next point. This book is the first step there, okay, to try to encourage people to really plan on a national way, okay. Before students ever get to college, they should already know something about the history of the arts. And by the way, once they're in college, with this cafeteria-style menu, that's out there now, okay, there's no core curriculum. You can take an art history class, but it's not required. So meanwhile, parents are bankrupting themselves, assuming their kids are getting a wonderful, introduction to the humanities, in the universities, and they're emerging. I encounter these graduates of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton in the media, okay, in New York now, or when they have to interview me about something, and they know nothing. They know absolutely nothing. They know a smattering of this and a smattering of that, and they have the snarky tone and this kind of, that they've mastered, okay. They have degrees in snark, apparently. All right. Okay, and then finally, my aim also, is to. I'm saying that the problem with our very diminished arts funding in this country is that most Americans don't understand the rationale for the arts. Okay, and so instead of the art world, snorting away in its sense of superiority, its supercilious, sanctimonious sense of how it's so much better than all those church-going people out there, okay? What we need to do is to actually make a crusade going out to conservatives to demonstrate to them, the centrality of the arts to civilization and the necessity for massively increased funding for the arts, not in the way that it used to be carelessly done, and judgments being made by the government about grants to individual artists. No, it should be, much more funding to communities, to states, and let them, devise the ways to distribute the money. But I'm particularly concerned about dance, okay? Because dance requires support, okay? Especially in our cities, where over the last 20, 25 years, rents have skyrocketed, in terms of adequate rehearsal space. Now, a painter, a dissident painter, a dissident poet or writer can suffer on quietly in silence and solitude, but the dancers absolutely require not only a physical space in order to practice their art, but that vital connection of the teacher-student, okay, the transmission down the generations. It's only you can't just be a dancer, on your own in either the modern dance tradition or the ballet tradition. So this is it's absolutely crucial for that the American citizens as a whole, whether they are of the left or the right, that they be united in this. That this is not in support of the arts is not something superficial and extraneous that can be easily cut. Similarly, art programs, in schools, when you have strapped municipal budgets and so on, but rather the point has to be understood and believed that the only thing that ever survives from a culture is its arts. Political power is transient. Political power is nothing, okay? It will vanish. The most powerful man of the world, okay, all right, is nobody, okay? The only way we remember any of the powerful men of the world is the way they were captured by artists, often anonymous artists in ancient Egypt and Rome, okay? So the bequest of any civilization, okay, and the test of its quality is its arts. And I feel that the left and the right, everyone, okay, across the political spectrum is guilty, okay, of offenses against the arts. And I hope that you now will go forth, I feel like, and be ambassadors for the arts. Okay. Okay. Could we get some light? Yeah, lights for the question period. We need.
When is your column coming back?
Oh, this is my Salon.com column. I was in the first issue of Salon in 1995, and I'm considered co-founding contributor. I guess I should bring it back because there's such demand. All right. I always go on hiatus, from the column when I have to finish a book. But my friends would be very grateful, I think, if I would go back to it, because my emails have gotten longer and longer. Okay, and like over the years, I'm like, so on. I think I need to go back. Well, thank you. I'll quote you, okay, to the editor. Okay, I'm going to speak to them after the tour. Okay, thank you.
Charlie Rose just had a group of experts on the future of the book. I would love to see your book, Glittering Images, include video portions into the Glittering Image book. So what you're saying can be expounded with your love and your passion.
Well, I think that something like this is going to be needed for to help at the primary school level. If we're going to have something nationally, it probably is going to have to be.
I'm an adult.
Some sort of,
I need this.
You're
kids need it, but I need it.
All right.
I need it too.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Don't forget me.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
I was just wondering if you have any advice for anybody thinking of going into academia today.
Have what?
Advice for anyone thinking of going into academia today.
Going to acting?
Academia.
Oh, academia. I'm sorry, academia.
You're a good
going
actress
to academia.
too. Then.
What field? What field?
Literature.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah.
Well. Here's the thing, okay, is that all the people who should be saving the profession have been just fleeing from it and saying, oh, I can't make any headway. But every single generation hits some fossilized ideology that needs to be attacked and toppled, okay? And it seems to me like this is a wonderful moment when there's such a vacuum, okay, in academe to just go in, to hold your nose, okay, just like talk the talk, just like to get by them, okay, and meanwhile plot your takeover, I mean, because right now it's an absolute wasteland, and it's obvious that people realize that the constant monotonous quotation of Lacan, Derrida, and Foucault no longer flies. But what's left is this kind of chaos of what's called cultural studies that is not cultured at all, and it doesn't know how to study. Okay, but I mean, all it is it's just you take some TV show, okay, a famous novel, okay, then maybe some reference to a fashion magazine, okay, and then you mention Hegel and late capitalism and throw it all up in the air like that, like popcorn, and that's it, okay? So it's completely ahistorical, okay? It's so insulting to popular culture because popular culture itself has its own tradition. All right, and so that's another thing I'm saying in this book is that chronology is meaningful, all right? And this is, I mean, it's hard to believe that this is dissident right now, okay? All right, because history does not exist for the major humanities professors and figures. History does not exist, okay? All right, history is a chaos, okay? And any allegation of a pattern in history is completely specious, okay? And this is why I complain so my book is just like my first book, Sexual Persona, is resolutely chronological, crossing 3,000 years right to the present. And so I complain in the introduction about the way that the term Renaissance is being systematically supplanted in academe. Oh, there are people in the balcony. I'm sorry I didn't see you all before. It was all in darkness. Hello. Okay, I didn't see you. Oh, sorry. Okay, no, okay. And the word Renaissance is slowly being abandoned. Okay, now the Renaissance has its insufficiencies, okay? It only came into usage in the late 19th century. I could see why there could be discussion about the need for something else. But what's being substituted, it's been going on now 15 years, going on 20, early modern, okay? Early modern is being substituted. And because this is a word that's coming not from aesthetics, but from economics. It refers to the emergence of capitalism from the late medieval period into what we used to call the Renaissance. Okay, so in other words, even people in arts and letters are looking at history in terms of economics alone. Right now, this term early modern, okay, makes an absolute hash of the visual arts. Okay? Because we're accustomed to saying, for example, that Botticelli was an early Renaissance painter. Okay, Michelangelo, a high classic artist, okay? And then Michelangelo, even in his own career, experienced the third phase of Renaissance style, mannerism, okay? After the sack of Rome, his Medici chapel, you see like distortion, tension, anxiety, et cetera, okay? All right, now, we're going to adopt early modern. Okay, so what you're going to say about Botticelli? Oh, Botticelli is an early modern painter. Okay, Michelangelo is a middle early modern painter, all right, and then late Michelangelo is late. It just shows what Philistines. I mean, these people. I mean, the nitwits. Okay, the absolute nitwits. Okay, who have made a hash. Okay, of the great tradition of humanistic scholarship. Okay, my early influences were it was the great school of German philology of the late 19th century and early 20th century. Okay, these were mostly men. Actually, Jane Harrison, the Cambridge anthropologist, was in this tradition. It was an ideal of massive erudition. Okay, rabbinic, erudition, and as I was doing the research, for this book, okay, all the bad things I had said, and thought and said about the way literary criticism and artistic criticism has gone downhill in the last 40 years was proved to me. I would begin with each chapter, with the earliest scholarship and move through it decade by decade by decade. All right, everything was solid, everything was substantive, useful until we got to the 80s. Okay, all right, a little bit late 70s, 80s, 90s. Okay. What a falling off, okay, in quality of scholarship in the humanities there's been. It is a scandal, an absolute scandal, okay? Now, it's not that there isn't good work being done by younger art historians. Yeah, there's good, competent work being done, but not one of those people, okay, has the vast learning or the sense of perspective, okay, of those great scholars that led up to, they were still working, many of them, following World War II, okay? And anyone who claims that there was an advance in scholarship because of the introduction of post-structural and postmodernism, such ignorance, absolute ignorance. I mean, there were books from Princeton University Press that I looked at for this book that were like major artists like David and Manet and so on that were so bad, okay, shockingly bad, okay? I mean, it is unbelievable, okay, that those books would emerge, okay, from Princeton University Press that have the imprint. And again, parents bankrupting themselves, thinking a Princeton degree, a decal to put on their car, that means something. Give me a break. At any rate, okay, back to your question, okay? All right. There is an enormous future, okay? Enormous future there, okay? All right. You must put armor on, okay? All right? Keep your thoughts to yourself, okay? Do what you need to do to gain position, and then unleash your imagination. All right, okay, all right. Okay. Yeah.
Could you comment on your perspective on George Lucas, please?
Oh, George Lucas. Oh, thank you. All right, yes. Now, in the process of, when I was planning this book, George Lucas was never part of it at all. I had planned to end Glittering Images with some examples of strong contemporary art. Okay, so I was looking and I was looking, and I found interesting things, but nothing strong enough, nothing that could hold up to the many masterpieces, that precede, the final chapter. And while I would like be, relaxing at night, I would be channel surfing, and I kept on stumbling on the Star Wars films being run back to back on Spike TV, okay, which is a man's channel, okay, all right, and coming into the films in that way, coming into them randomly in the middle. Okay, without the narrative, propulsion, suddenly made me start to see the visual components. Okay, and Lucas's visual virtuosity. Okay, I became progressively obsessed with the finale to Revenge of the Sith, which is the last film. It was released in 2005. It's the last film that was made in the Star Wars series. It was directed by Lucas himself. It narratively belongs to the midway, in the story. And I'm telling you, this finale, it's unbelievable. It takes place on the volcano planet of Mustafar, and which is completely, made up, planet. And this episode is a combination of live action, okay, of computer animation, okay, and also of model making. There's a tremendous model was made, miniature model of the landscape of this volcano planet. And what I was researching, I was just amazed by what it took them like 10 months, to make this model and then raise it up on a giant platform, to tip it, pump system, to have the lava flowing, smoke and cork and all kinds. I'm saying this is a work of installation art. The actual model that was used is itself, belongs, to be respected for its place in the arts. But the actual finale, okay, how tepid contemporary art seemed compared to the passionate quality of this finale with this huge musical score that was recorded at the Abbey Road studio, in London. I say it's like a black mass, okay, and so on. And you're getting this tremendous duel that's like dance theater. The longest duel ever filmed, okay, is this duel, and it is no computer speeding up, okay. These two actors, okay, Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, they did that, and for months they learned this sword play. It's absolutely phenomenal. It is dance. This is contemporary dance, all right. And okay, so you get this music and the passionate emotion, the two love-hate between these two men. Okay, and the whole thing's like a Puccini opera. Okay, going back and they're on and so on. All right, and then so you have this like huge, like it's like romantic nature painting, apocalyptic landscape of the lava. All right, and then. And you get this theme that Lucas cross-cuts. There's a destruction of the Senate chamber going on the planet of Coruscant. Okay, so you get this theme of the destruction of politics going on at the same moment, and you have the destruction of industry going on because as these two guys are wrestling around, they like throw off the whole control panels. Okay, and the whole industrial complex of the planet of Mustafar starts degenerating. You get these girders. In the lava like this. All right, and then, okay, the revelation after 30 years, how did Darth Vader get born? Who is Darth Vader? How did he end up to be Robot Man? How did that happen? Okay, there it is. We see the handsome, okay, Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, okay, getting like, he loses his arms and his legs. Then he catches on fire from the volcano. He incinerates all these horrors and so on. And then finally his broken body is taken. It's surgical droids putting him together. Okay, it's like a Frankenstein monster thing. Cross-cutting to Natalie Portman dying in childbirth. Okay, all right. Okay. It's fine. Luke and Leia, whom we met. They're born. Luke, Leia. Okay, they're born. Okay, and so on. And then after all these horrors, okay, incredible control, unbelievable control of tone. All right. The Luke and Leia are separated because no one knows they exist, okay? Separated. And they're taken to distant planets. And one is a beautiful planet based on Switzerland, okay, with like, and it is footage of Switzerland, with like mountains and valleys, And the other one is a desert planet with Tatooine, with its double suns, and so on. And so you get this amazing thing, strong men arriving with baby. Baby handed off to other strong man. Strong man sitting with wife, okay, against great landscape, okay. It is so beautiful, okay. So, and Lucas himself after his divorce, retired for 2 years to raise his adopted children, okay? So it's like an incredible personal reference there. I think that is, first of all, that is extremely progressive, okay? To end with this idea of its tenderness of men, okay, toward babies, okay? Not just children, but toward babies. And it ends with so absolutely gorgeous. I'm saying, my God, okay? Nothing has been produced, I'm serious, nothing in the last 30 years in any of the arts, okay, has been produced as emotionally compelling and significant as the finale of Revenge of the Sith. Oh, wait, am I supposed to go back there? Where am I? Oh, wait, who's, am I supposed to go here? Are you next?
Yes, I believe I was. But please, if you'd like to go.
Go ahead.
This isn't a question. It's more or less a response to your statement about Americans' lack of appreciation for art. About 500 years ago, Luther translated the Bible into German. And it was felt that a lot of the Catholic Church's culture was a distraction and a distortion of the truth of the Bible.
Right.
And America was settled by Puritans who felt that way. And I think that's the basis for why we often don't appreciate art.
This is exactly the point I'm making in the introduction. Absolutely. In fact, I also say in the introduction that because American conservatism is so powered by the Southern Baptist and evangelical Protestantism, that is one of the most iconoclastic traditions, going back to Martin Luther. Yes, the Protestant reformers, Luther and Calvin, Knox and Zwingli, were iconoclasts and actually sponsored destruction of Catholic images, of statues and stained glass windows, and even organs in churches, okay, were considered, anything that was not biblically based was considered to be in some way a pagan survival or intrusion. Right? I think this is absolutely the case, is that our culture still keeps on returning in some way to that, the original Puritan roots, New England roots. And therefore, this is why, visual culture needs to be supplied in America, because it's not something that's coming up naturally from our culture. Yeah, thank you. Yes, that's a great point. I'm glad you agree with my thesis. Thank you. That's excellent. I'm happy with that, because that's actually one of the things I'm trying to maintain. Go on. Yeah.
How are you?
Oh, fine.
Good. It's a pleasure to meet you, finally.
Oh, yep.
You were required reading in my house
Oh.
for many years.
Oh,
yes, before I could marry my wife, I had to read every one of your books.
Oh,
and
that's
yes.
nice to know.
Yes, so this is a real thrill and a real pleasure. I have two questions, so if the crowd will indulge me. The first one's it's a quick one, I think, and this comes from my lovely wife. After the...
Where is she?
Sharona, you want to wave her?
Oh.
There we go, great.
All right. All right, okay.
After Kurt Varnado, after the late Robert Hughes, after Simon Schama, after you, who do you see as the next heir apparent? Because you mentioned there are no culture critics right now. So who do you see?
It's terrible because when I was having my feud with Susan Sontag back in the early 90s, yeah. I mean, I always said that I wanted to be much more generous and hospitable to whatever the young culture critic came along, okay, compared to how Sontag had been nasty to me. And I'm waiting. I've been waiting and waiting. And at first I thought in the 90s, I thought, oh, Katie Roiphe, she's going to be the intellectual of her generation. And then what happened? She went off to write memoirs and so on. I mean, I just don't. It's really shocking to me. It's absolutely shocking that since I came on the scene in 1990, okay, here it is 2012. Okay, so where are they? They've all been processed through that academic mill, and I'm so lucky, I feel, that in the 1960s, still my professors believed that not in assigning critics to us, especially contemporary critics, okay, but assigning the primary texts, okay, and so the foundation of my career is my exposure to the works of art themselves, whether they're literary or artistic, okay, and this younger generation, this is why there's no culture critics. It's like they have had to spend so much time you have so little time as it is in college. They had to waste so much time trying to decipher those corkscrew bad translations, English translations of French works that had only relevance to French culture with this heavy Racinian tradition, had nothing to do whatever with our culture. So they've adopted this, they've had to unlearn this bad prose. That's the problem. They don't know how to write. And then also another problem is, with the web. Okay, now I was early on writing for the web. I believed in the web at a time when it was still controversial. People said, "Oh no, the web's not going to go anywhere." No. All right, but to write for the web, there is a distinct way of writing for the web. What I'm concerned about is like the criticism is becoming very contaminated. It's either totally obscurantist academies, or it's this like snarky, casual, undisciplined blather of the blogs. Okay, right? People are losing any sense of how to shape a voice. Whereas it's still in Britain. Okay, when people are writing for British magazines or British newspapers, there's still a sense of snap and spark, and and almost sometimes a little bit too much, kind of fear of emotion. There's a lot of surface panache in British prose, but then the little bit kind of titter. They don't want to feel too deeply. Okay, whereas we Americans, we're like the barbaric yawp. It's like the Whitman said, and so on. And we have like jazz and like Hollywood, and we have no problem with emotion. So I'm concerned that what's happening today is that is that criticism, is now, it's like, I don't know, it's like lost it's boneless. It's boneless right now in the United States. So I think it's a kind of cultural wasteland. And another thing is, because of the web, is that everyone's become very niche. There are very few sort of central points, like Salon tried to be, for a long time, where you have like a central cultural arena. And with the magazines also, the magazines are failing, right? The newspapers are failing. The book reviews have been dropped altogether, like the Washington Post until they dropped it years ago. The newspapers are struggling to survive, and so there are very few places for young critics to speak to a general audience. And I think that's crucial. You don't just speak to people who agree with you in a niche, whatever your niche thing is, okay? Oh, what are your favorite blogs? These are my favorite blogs. Oh, please. Wait, why there should be like an arena, okay, of things. And that's what so I feel lucky that I came on the scene at that moment in the early 90s when I could write for a huge variety of places that now those don't even exist anymore, okay? Like I was the first humanities professor to be writing op-eds. People in political science or economics from Princeton or Harvard, they had customarily written op-eds of a serious nature, but humanities professors weren't writing op-eds. Okay, in fact, when I was first doing that in the early 90s, there was this Harvard woman post-structuralist, okay, and so on, who told a student newspaper, serious people don't write for the newspapers, like that. Okay, and then suddenly within a year, okay, after they were they're stampeding after me desperately, trying to like write op-eds, but that thing of like writing for a general audience, okay? What voice should one use? What language should one use? I love that. I think it's fabulous. I think it's absolutely fabulous. And now, how can we get critics, okay, when you don't know, like there's, again, so few places to write for, another thing is that students, graduate students, are not encouraged to imagine that there were great works of scholarship before the 80s. I've encountered many books where the actual bibliography in the back, it starts with the 80s. Okay, they honestly believe scholarship was revolutionized by post-structuralism and postmodernism, and that those books, okay, produced in academia since then, actually contain the whole of human knowledge that you could ever want. You don't have to go earlier than the 80s, right? When it's the actual opposite, the 80s on is like Drek, okay, and then pre-Drek, the sort of the BD and post-D, so all right, was actually the best, right? So I mean, I don't know what to do, what to say. I mean, it's horrendous.
Sure.
We just need those, like where's that young man before? We need him to, that young man, okay, we need you to revolutionize academia. We'll never get the cultural critics, okay, out of academia. Right. Yeah. Oh, okay, all right, thank you, all right. So, all right, so